What's going on today, YouTube? Rob here. In today's video, we're doing a Runnick deck profile. This is a deck that I've wanted to build for quite some time, and finally managed to get all the cards for the deck profile. This deck is pretty cool because it is a mill deck, and it's more of an unconventional way to win your duels. Before we get started, I just want to say, if you're new to the channel, consider leaving a like, commenting on what you might want to see next, and subscribing for more fun videos. And without wasting any more of your time, let's get into it.
Alright guys, let's get into this pure Runnick deck profile. Starting things off, we've got triple copies of Runnick Fountain. Kinda hard to play the deck without it. This lets you activate Runnick quick play spells on your opponent, or from your hand on your opponent's turn. Once per turn, you can if you activate a Runnick quick play spell, you can target up to 3 Runnick quick play spells in your graveyard and place them on the bottom of your deck in any order, then draw the same number of cards. This basically ensures that you don't deck yourself out, and you can constantly recur your cards from the graveyard. And we've got triple copies of Runnick Tip. You can only activate one of these effects, but this also means you skip your battle phase after activation, but you can either add a Runnick card from your deck to your hand, except the Runnick Tip, and then banish the top card of your opponent's deck, or you can special summon a Runnick monster from your extra deck to the extra monster zone. This is good because this deck is all spells, and you need a way to get to your fusion monsters in your extra deck, so this is a really good way to just kind of cheat it out. Then we have 2 copies of Smithing Storm. Again, you can activate one of these effects, but skip your next battle phase. So you can banish cards from the top of your opponent's deck up to the number of cards they control, or you can special summon a Runnick monster from your extra deck to the extra monster zone. I might bump this up to 3 and, I don't know, take out a couple cards to fix some of the ratios in this, but for now 2 is fine. We've got Runnick Slumber. This lets you target one face-up monster on the field, and the next time that monster would be destroyed by battle or card effect this turn, it is not destroyed. Also, it cannot attack this turn. Then, after applying this effect, banish the top 3 cards from your opponent's deck, or again, you could special summon a Runnick monster from your extra deck to the extra monster zone. Now, this is really good because it doesn't just allow you to banish 1 card, it's 3 cards. With Slumber, which is really good for decking out your opponent, which is your main win con for this deck. All this deck really focuses on is trying to mill your opponent's cards. Runnick Freezing Curses, triple copies. Again, this lets you target 1 effect monster your opponent controls, negate its effects, and that's until the end of this turn. Then banish the top 3 cards of your opponent's deck, or special summon a Runnick monster from your extra deck to the extra monster zone. Another really good card. As we go through the Runnick cards, you see that a lot of the banishing stuff, it tends to get a little higher in terms of the cards that you can banish. And we've got 3 copies of Runnick Allure. Kind of hard not to play this card at 3. Each time a quick play spell card is activated, banish the top card of your opponent's deck, and you can only control 1 Runnick Allure. If you were able to use this as multiples, this card would be absolutely broken for the deck, I think. Just because of the fact that pretty much every other card in the deck is a quick play spell. And being able to banish multiple cards from your opponent's deck using the same continuous spell is really good, or at least it would be if that was part of the effect. But next up we have Runnick Flashing Fire. This lets you target a special summon monster your opponent controls and destroy it, then banish the top 2 cards of your opponent's deck, or special summon a Runnick monster from your extra deck to the extra monster zone. And then we've got 2 copies of Runnick Dispelling. I might put this up to 3, but for now 2 seems to work just fine. If your opponent adds a card from their deck to their hand, except during the draw phase, discard 1 random card from their hand and then banish the top 2 cards of their deck, or special summon a Runnick monster from your extra deck to the extra monster zone. I really like this card just because of the fact that you can take 3 cards from your opponent, 1 from their hand and 2 from their deck. And again, that's why I kind of want to bump it up to 3, just to kind of give myself a little bit more room as to cards that I can discard from my opponent, and again, more milling. Then we've got Runnick Golden Droplet. So your opponent draws a card, then you can banish the top 4 cards of their deck, or you can special summon a Runnick monster from your extra deck to the extra monster zone. The banishing 4 for Runnick Golden Droplet is actually like really amazing, especially later in the games when your opponent is running low on cards. That's also why I like to run 3 of the Runnick Destruction, because this lets you target a spell or trap that your opponent controls and destroy it, and then banish the top 4 cards of your opponent's deck. Same thing as with Droplet, except it's spell and trap removal. And again, later in the game, this works wonders. Then we've got 2 copies of Book of Eclipse to round off just sort of our main quick play spells. This lets you change all face-up monsters on the field to face-down defense position, and during the end phase of this turn, change as many face-down defense position monsters your opponent controls as possible to face-up defense. Then your opponent draws cards equal to the number of monsters changed face-up by this effect. I like the card because it does let you basically mill more of your opponent's deck depending on how many cards they control. The only downside to it is that they get to draw cards. We've got 1 copy of Upstart Goblin, again letting you dig deeper into your engine is fine, even if your opponent does gain life points. The trade-off for that is just fine. I'm playing 1 Desires because even though we're banishing 10 of our own cards, it's always good to draw 2, and because we're basically maxing out on every other card in the deck, we're not necessarily going to banish multiples of the same card, which is why I'm also only playing this at 1, because I don't want to take that risk. This being a 43 card deck. Then we have the 1 copy of One Day of Peace, which lets each player draw a card, and then neither player takes damage until the end of the opponent's next turn. And for some utility cards, we've got 2 copies of Super Poly, letting you discard a card and then fusion summon a fusion monster from your extra deck, using monsters from either field as fusion material. And again, this is really good because we do have quite a few different Super Poly targets that I'll get to later. And again, just really good quick play spell, keeps your engines going. Might put it up to 3, might keep it at 2. This is a card, Cosmic Cyclone, that I might cut. I just have it in here for mine right now, because that didn't get touched on the ban list, and it is a quick play spell, so it does work with the deck. Basically just letting you banish a card, a spell and trap from the field by paying 1,000 life points, which is totally fine. Because again, the only thing you want to do with this deck is mill your entire opponent's deck. Then we've got Called by the Grave, just to stop hand traps. Mainly Ash, because we're not playing any other monsters in this deck. There's no way we're going to get Nibiru. There's no way, there's a lot of cards that just Called by can take care of. And then lastly, we've got triple copies of Dark Ruler No More. This is another card, like, I only have it in here right now just because it's utility. Just in case my opponent has this really big board and I want to be able to just make sure that they don't have room to do anything. But again, I might cut it, or at least, I don't know, fumble around with the ratios. But that's the 43 or 42 card main deck. Let's move on to our extra deck, where we're running 3 copies of each of the Runnick fusion monsters. So we've got 3 Lunin, 3 Hugin, and 3 Gary. Gary lets you target a non-quick play Runnick spell in your graveyard and add it to your hand. When this card is destroyed by battle, you can target one card on the field and destroy it. Moonin is really good too because it lets you discard a card and then add one Runic continuous spell from your deck to your hand, which is great because this gives you Allure. And when your opponent activates a card or effect that targets a Runic card or cards you control or a set card or cards, quick effect, you can banish this card you control, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy that card. And once per turn during the end phase, gain 1,000 life points. Then we've got Hugin, which if this card is summoned from the extra deck, you can discard one card and add one Runic field spell from your deck to your hand, which is great because this constantly can give you access to your Runic Fountain. And then if this card will be destroyed by a card effect, you can banish this card you control instead. And if this card leaves or is on the field, is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can return it to the extra deck, which is really good because you can constantly just kind of recur your Hugin with its pendulum-esque ability there of returning to the extra deck. And then for the last of my extra deck, we have Super Poly targets in Dragostapelia, Garura, Starving Venom, and Mud Dragon of the Swamp. Mud Dragon's great because you can make this an attribute, and then like you can basically use this card's effect to make this become any attribute that you want it to. And then it protects all your monsters because you can change this to dark, and then every monster, at least for your Super Poly targets, are unaffected, which is amazing. Then you've got Starving Venom Fusion Dragon for your potential OTKs, with the fact that you can target a special summon an opponent's special summon monster and gain attack equal to it. Plus, you can also copy its name and effect. So, again, that's really good. And then you can basically just wipe out your opponent's field if this card is destroyed, as long as they have special summon monsters on the field. Your Garura is awesome because any battle damage that your opponent takes from battles involving this card is doubled. And if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can draw one card, which is great because it keeps your engine online, especially if you have Runic Fountain, being able to use your quick play spells on your opponent's turn. And then we've got the one copy of Dracostapelia, which basically locks out sprites. And it's just really good for other problematic cards because it does negate the effects once you place the Predator counter on it. And it does change the levels, so that's really good depending on what sort of deck you're going up against.
Alright guys, that's it for this Runic deck profile. I hope you guys enjoyed, and if you did, be sure to leave a like, be sure to comment on what you might want to see next, and if you're not already subscribed, subscribe to the channel for more fun Yu-Gi-Oh videos, and I will catch you in the next one. That's game.